Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 6, 1999, and under the previous order of the House, the following members are recognized for 5 minutes each. Mr. Paul for 5 minutes. House will be in order. House will be in order. Would members take their conversations from the floor? Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. More and more people now are talking about an oncoming recession. I tend to agree. I think we are moving into a recession, and for good reasons. But already the question that comes up so often among politicians is who will get blamed? Will the current president be blamed for the recession, or will the next president be blamed? Will the current Congress be blamed for the recession, or the next Congress? I don't believe either should be blamed. I think we should deal with the real cause of the business cycle, and that is the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve System causes and brings about a boom period in a cycle, but it also brings about the bust, because the bust, the correction, is the inevitable consequence of the boom caused by unduly inflating the money supply. Soon we will hear many, we've already heard some from the financial circles as well as from politicians, to lower interest rates. This will keep the economy from turning down. It will prevent the recession from coming. And if we do have a recession, it is always said, what you do is you lower the interest rates. The dwelling on the interest rates and not talking about what it takes to lower interest rates, I think, is a serious mistake. The only way the Federal Reserve can lower interest rates is by inflating the money supply, increasing the money supply, which is the cause of our problems. So if the cause of our problem is the inflation, the increase in the money supply, which causes a boom, you can hardly solve our problems by further inflating. And then, too, there's a period of time in the business cycle where inflating the money supply or lowering interest rates do not get the response that many people hope for. Take, for instance, what's happening in Japan today. There's no response whatsoever. They take interest rates down below 1%, and they cannot generate economic activity to really get them out of their slump. The other irony of all this is that when you have an economic boom, another reason given for raising interest rates to slow up the economy is to stop the inflation. This is fallacious thinking, because the inflation comes from the money supply. The idea that economic growth and prosperity and productivity causes inflation, that is the price type of inflation, is wrong. If you have good productivity, prices go down, they do not go up. So the whole notion that you have to slow up the economy in order to prevent inflation is absolutely incorrect. The problem I see is that Congress for too long has conceded too much of their authority over control of the monetary system to the Federal Reserve System, which acts in secrecy. It is something that is directly stated in the Constitution that the Congress shall have the responsibility over the money supply, not a Federal Reserve System. Quite frankly, the Federal Reserve System is not even authorized by the Constitution. Now, if in the midst of a recession the Federal Reserve decides that they want to lower interest rates, but the dollar's also dropping, and you lower interest rates, you cause the dollar to go down, and price inflation will occur because of that. So it isn't quite so simple as saying, well, let's just tell the Fed what to do. Lower the interest rates and we'll solve our problems. We have the problem of the international debt. We as Americans now owe more than any other country in the world. We owe $1.7 trillion. Our current account deficit is over $400 billion a month. We borrow well over $1 billion, $100 billion a day to support the international debt. The reason we should be concerned about this more so than we are is the fact that when we're in a recession, revenues go crashing down. the inflation that occurred over these past 10 years, which was artificial, created giant revenues from capital gains from this artificially high stock market. Well, that's all being reversed now. So revenues are going to go down here, and we'll have to deal with this in the next Congress. Unfortunately, there are some who are concerned about this, say there's going to be gridlock and the two sides won't get together, and the government is now divided. The House, the Senate, and the presidency is undecided, and therefore there will be gridlock. Quite frankly, I don't believe that's going to happen. I sort of would hope that we would have some gridlock. What I think is going to happen is that once the recession sets in, and there's a need for additional spending, and there will be no longer a concern at all about the deficit. And that's when the Congress will spend, the Federal Reserve will inflate, and it may temporarily help, but on the long run, it doesn't do the trick. That is not the way you gain economic prosperity out of a printing press. You just can't allow a Federal Reserve to believe it creates capital by creating credit out of thin air.
Gentleman's time has expired.